like the fifth time I'm doing this with you guys, and I still can't figure this shit out. Oh my God.
All right, so we are live now. So go ahead, Dan.
Yes, we are live and we are excited here. So, Danny Stefanic, CEO and founder of MootUp, the 3D Metaverse virtual events platform. He is also the founder of the world's first web XR learning experience platform, LearnBright, and founder of 3D internet company Exit Reality Inc., the world's first web metaverse, which is incredible. He has been creating groundbreaking 3D businesses for over 27 years and is considered a leader in the field of the metaverse for business, which is so matching how we are here. On top of his corporate roles, he has assisted companies with angel investment, international licensing, acquisitions, exits, managing distributed teams, and has personally closed acquisitions valued at $85 million. Welcome, Danny.
Thank you. And that's the short version.
Yes,
there's more
yes.
to discuss. Yeah.
So I'm so glad that I could bring you onto the show, Danny. I stumbled upon MootUp probably right before COVID, or maybe like in February of 2019, was it? Oh my God, 20? I don't even, I can't even keep track. But I remember wanting to host an event and stumbled upon MootUp and just fell in love with the platform. And we were able to host a party on Mars on MootUp. And I have to share the experience. I have to say, people were just so excited. They could go into the space and they were blown away by this out of this world experience. There was a pool, it was set up on Mars, and people could, float around the floaty, and there was a unicorn floaty, and there was a dance kind of bar. People could do a dance off. There was a lot of interactions, including chatbots, green screen, all these amazing functions and features. And over time, Danny and I, he became my client, and I just love how Danny is so well versed in this space. It's almost like I just want to pick his brain. And he's like this walking Wikipedia in VR space, and he's been doing this for 27 years. So I'm so happy that we could have you here, Danny. So I want to have you talk about the history of Metaverse. As we all know, it's like a big thing now, but you've been in it for so long. So I want to hear about the history.
Yeah, sure. Look, I'm happy to share all sorts of things. And people often mistake me for an expert because I've just been around for so long and I've been involved with these companies and this sort of wave of adoption of virtual reality technology that you just, knowing all this stuff that you accumulate just by being a bit older, really. But, way back in 1994, I started the Virtual Reality Association back in Australia. And that was because I met a lot of people who were creating virtual reality technology, but many companies were creating the same thing, basically reinventing the wheel. I wanted everyone to accelerate what was happening, so I created the association for that. But even prior to that, I was building VR companies, even pre-internet. So Garage VR, they called it back then, with power gloves and LCD displays connected to 386 computers and running your own little virtual worlds, which today you just laugh at. They were so simple. But even before, even pre-internet, we had people building multi-user social virtual worlds like Randy Farmer and Chip Morningstar built a thing called Habitat, which allowed people to get online with Commodore 64 computers and rock around. It was two-dimensional, but it was still a social sort of virtual world. And so these things have been happening all along the way. And my particular interest always being, how do we get this onto the web, right? Not about necessarily games, having a PlayStation or an Xbox, but how do we make this accessible to everyone through browsers? And it's interesting because that was actually possible at one stage. In a long time ago, in a galaxy far away, there was a browser called Netscape, and the first version of Internet Explorer. And me and my team built the first multi-user virtual worlds that just natively worked in the browser. Those two browsers supported 3D, as natively. They had plugins that came with the browser that allowed you to render 3D. It didn't quite take off. There was a lot of excitement, a lot of vision casting of where the future would be. And today I see it hasn't changed that much. You can do searches for metaverse stuff and pull up things from decades ago, and the thoughts and the ideas are pretty much the same. So there's a wealth of knowledge out there if you know how to search for it. So yeah, but then 3D was abandoned by browsers. And so we kind of sort of had a bit of a slump. But there were amazing things being done by Sony. A great company I have a lot of respect for is called Black Sun, which is actually named after a hacker bar, which is a black pyramid with the top cut off that's featured in Neil Stephenson's cyberpunk novel, Snow Crash, which I recommend reading. It's probably a bit older now, so there's things that may not be as acceptable in sort of diversity and inclusion perspective, but it certainly covered that idea. And so people were building all these virtual worlds, experimenting, art, science, real business values, online shopping, you name it, using predominantly open standards like VRML, which some people will remember fondly, others will cringe when they hear it. But that was kind of the 3D format that everyone had adopted and started playing with, and it was a fun Wild West kind of time. Playing with VR and rudimentary headsets. In fact, just in the next room, I've got a headset from 1997, built by Sony. That is, it looks wickedly cool. The resolution is terrible, but the style of the device is just, it's like something from the future. So we've had devices, we've been playing with these things, and the people that played in the initial roles of virtual reality on the internet are now, like senior executives at Amazon and other companies, just in different roles. But a lot of people I catch up with have these fond memories of those times of the first wave of 3D internet, let's call it.
Hey, Danny, I have to say 1998, I would blow my college allowance and spend an internet cafe chatting MIRC. So,
right, yeah.
MIRC.
Absolutely.
And you have to connect it to different states. So I was in the Philippines. I would memorize different state because some of the state you can connect it way faster than the other one. So I remember somewhere in the East Coast, like, I don't know, NYC or something, like it just gets faster. But man, I was so addicted to it. I would blow my college allowance because we have to pay by the hour. 1998, I remember that.
Internet cafes, something to remember.
So,
in fact,
so Danny,
yeah, go ahead.
So you were stuck in the 90s still. So I gotta fast forward you to 2000.
Please do. Yeah, please do. So yeah,
so what
2000.
happened? Yeah.
Well, for those that have been in the business long enough, 2000 was when the dot-com bubble burst. So there was so much hype going on and so much vaporware and companies promising things and people throwing money at companies just because they said they had .com in their name, even if they didn't have a domain name yet. You just could say that you would. It was just an insane time. And for me, I built up a couple of companies prior to that. One was building the first commercial 360-degree view of the web, so a web-based 360 solution, which was used in most of the US virtual tours in real estate. It's probably still used today. I think Sony.
Wow! So you were the person behind the now how we experience checking out houses on like Compass or Zillow. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So a number of the technologies that I built have kind of been around for a long time, and I've done a lot of world firsts. In that time, we also built the world's first 3D shopping solution. So that was something that could take a 2D shop with its products and automatically create a 3D virtual world out of it, where you could see all the products on pedestals, you could walk around and meet other people, and you could buy the products. So basically you had a 2D store and a 3D store. And I think we'll see more of that coming.
Coming back, yeah.
There's pros and cons. A lot of people just try and recreate reality in VR or in 3D, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. The way we can do things digitally, you need to think afresh instead of try and copy what's being done in the real world. But sometimes what's been done in the real world, copying that across is a good on-ramp to at least get people to dip their toe in the water and be comfortable trying it out, and then show them what can be done with an amazing kind of party on Mars, for example. I think that's a good thing. But yeah, 2000 was when I started Exit Reality, which was this idea I had of converting every single web page on the internet automatically into a 3D world, but taking all the content that was on the page as kind of the seed of how the architecture would end up looking. So if you imagine you have images, you have colors, you have videos, text on your website, and if all that was mixed together, put in a blender, and it created a seed of what the architecture of your website would look like,
Right.
what we created, and we called it 3D CSS. It's like this style you see on web pages, but a 3D version. And you could just throw a different architecture type at a site. It could be displayed as a kind of shop or a garden or some Greek influenced design. And all the links on your web pages became hyperlinks or portals to other websites. And I see that it was a great technology success building that. It launched in 2008, so 8 years worth of building that business. It closed in 2012. But it was technically brilliant, but the business model, which relied on advertising, kind of tanked around the global financial crisis. All the innovation spend dried up. But I still really believe in it. And if you look hard on the internet, you can find my blueprint for the 3D internet is published there as a quite extensive patent. But it is something that it's another topic I'd really like to discuss with you.
Yeah, we may have to chat offline on this because I've been thinking about the same idea that you're talking about, but it's like a diorama, like bringing in 2D and then experience it like a diorama in layers. But okay, we'll talk offline about this, Danny.
It kind of brings me to another topic, which is what we've kind of discussed about why I should to come to this talk today was about all the hype that's happening around. Let's call it the land rush or gold rush for land in all these metaverse properties. And, I think a prediction for 2022 is that as we get further down the year, we're going to recognize more and more that the model for the metaverse, for an inclusive metaverse that involves everyone, is not going to be land-based. It's not going to be a something where you can't control who your neighbors are. It's not going to be that sort of idea because the whole idea of land is artificial scarcity, making people buy land. Why? Because I can buy a property maybe next to Microsoft or Google and try and get their traffic, or the world that designs it makes sure that people can only land in certain spaces or places. And then if all the foot traffic's going by you, then you're going to get more traffic and therefore maybe you'll get more visitors, and there might be value in it. Apart from land speculators, people trying to pump up the value of the land and then sell it off, and it's like a hot potato. The last person's left with it, is the one that has really paid.
So where do you see this going then? Instead of that route, where do you see this going?
Well, it's influenced by my earlier work on Exit Reality, and really, which is a reflection of the way the web works. We have sites, we have pages, we link to people and other things that we're interested in. And that's how we form these relationships. And that's where our value is as a person or an organization. We say, this is what we think is valuable. We're going to point to it. We're going to link to it. And so we'll end up with a 3D metaverse where it's hyperlinked, across. You'll have your world or spaces and you'll link to the things that you like. You'll open doors or portals into other people's places. They might be bidirectional, they might be one way. But that's how it's going to link together. So it'll be very hyperdimensional. It won't be a flat, linear sort of geography that you just walk around forever. Some worlds might be. So some of the worlds within the metaverse can be like that, for sure.
Right.
But the internet as a metaverse is not going to be that way. It's going to be hyperlinked. So that's pretty exciting to see. And ultimately, it's going to be web-based. That's the thing that we can see. At the moment, it's not as high quality as games, but it will get on a collision course with that in the next 3 to 5 years. The quality will increase to games level, but you can't forego the the capacity of the web and how you can integrate with almost any other service, product, opportunity, content, entertainment is just extraordinary. So it's a natural gravity towards getting people to do that. And now that all the browsers support 3D, there's no real reason not to.
Yeah, it's the IOM. It's the Internet of Metaverse.
Yeah, the mixed reality of things.
Yeah. So how do you think? Well, as we're talking about the Internet of Metaverse, you and I have talked about a lot of challenges as we build a lot more of these beautiful spaces, imaginative, like out of this world experiences, and we're really pushing the tech as we go along. What are some of the challenges that you see? I know you and I talked briefly last week. The whole instancing issue, the space and the vastness of it, having the amount of people in this. And if this truly were to evolve to what you call this like an internet experience still, and if the whole instancing is still limited to 50 to 100 people at one time, do you see this? Can we solve this in the long run, Danny?
Yeah, sure we can. So it's the technology is actually. It might seem simple to get something up and running as a kind of research and development project, right? You grab a game engine like Unity, you get some multi-user services, some libraries and stuff, and you throw something together, and you and I jump in a world with some avatars we've got from a library, and we wave to each other and we go, wow, this is great. We can make a business that's going to be able to scale, and we're going to run these huge events like Fortnite does, and it's going to be amazing. Yeah. There's a big chasm, a big gap between getting something running and having it work commercially.
Skill.
And we've been building our web-based metaverse platform for 7 years, and we've been up against every device you can imagine and all sorts of issues. And it's really a trial by fire to get through all of that. We'll get more tools and more things are going to become available, but most people are gravitating into areas that are, pretty obvious, like let's grab a game engine and build something on a game engine like Unity or Unreal. And we're not doing that. We've built our own web-based engine natively all the way from the ground up. But the Unity and Unreal has some excellent tools for building games, but it's not something for building what I call a metaverse for business, which is more associated with creating business value. And so those tool sets aren't natively web, they don't speak web. You can hook them up, kind of jerry-rig things together, but they also don't perform that well across all devices. And web has the benefit of you just go to a URL and it works. And Unity does allow you to export as web, but it only works generally on desktop. So you can't have it work on. If you're going to deploy something like a metaverse, you have to have it hit 100% of your audience. So that means mobile phones, tablets, laptops, Chromebooks, all the VR and AR headsets on the market. And the only way to do that is web. Or like one of my competitors from our learning company has, they keep track of, they build and maintain 14 different apps just to provide one solution. And it's a nightmare just to cover all the different marketplaces and places where it can get used, and it's painful, really painful to have to do that. So that's where I think web is going to win. But as far as scale is a whole another challenge. Even Fortnite, with the massive events they've done, they've got all this publicity. The maximum you really had was 100 people in one completely closed off silo. So 100 people over there, another 100 people over there, another 100 people, and they just repeated that. So, and all of the content was pre-downloaded for you to play. It wasn't real time. So if you can pre-deploy all the content and get people split up into maximum 100 people at a time that can't talk to anyone else that's in the event, really it was a 100-person event multiplied many times. That's really what these events were. So increasing that capacity and allowing many people to interact with each other and see each other is something the games industry is trying to solve anyway. And I think we're going to see in this year a lot more companies either really work towards solving that, and they'll be the superstars in the industry, or we'll start to see a lot of organizations try with these platforms and either fail or at least find that it's not meeting the expectations they have from, let's say, using Microsoft Teams or Slack or other tools where you have all of your people from your company are in there, and you can just chat to them. Anyone, it doesn't matter if there's 60,000 people in your company, you can find and chat to them, or you can bring a group together, and there's no limits. But in the 3D, we end up hitting these limits that people aren't familiar with. So there's no prior knowledge that that's going to be a problem. So their expectations get damaged. So that's something will either be solved this year through pain or through conscientious research by people prior to running a metaverse initiative.
But Danny, I was talking about this with a client of mine. Realistically, I think it's aligning expectations, because realistically, you and I have been in rooms where when it's more than 10 people moving around the space and you talking on top of each other, there's friction. It's not a realistic experience anymore, because everyone wants to talk, and then there's just awkward pauses, right? It's almost like a Zoom meeting. So yes, in reality, you would love to see 100 people of your colleagues and friends joining a space and have a conversation. But the reality is, like, you can't really talk to 100 people simultaneously at one time. It's just not a realistic expectation. That's what I keep on telling clients. Like, yeah, you want to have 100 people, but really, do you want 100 people talking at the same time in a space, even with the spatial audio thing turned on? I personally think that's not realistic. However, that is what people are trying to connect the two: reality, going to a conference with thousands of people in a space, or a concert, and then going to a metaverse where you're trying to have a conversation. But what I like about MoodUp is you've created a solution where you can have like pods, like the audio pods, right? We set up like with different rooms have different audio pods, so that you consciously choose to go into a pod where you can have a more intimate conversation without being interrupted and everybody talking over you. So that's the piece that I like about MoodUp, is having those bubbles, and then each space has its own function, whether it's a 4 people meeting or a 20 people dance floor, or I like that. So talk to us about how you go about solving those issues.
Yeah, certainly. And just for context for people listening, MoodUp is a virtual events and meetings platform, and it's entirely web-based. So it works on every device. You can have someone in a VR headset with someone else joining on the mobile phone, and the interface adapts automatically to the devices. Through a thing called progressive enhancement. The more features you have, the more immersive it becomes. But you're absolutely right about the way we handle audiences needs to be considered. One of the biggest asks is that the people who run the events, and this may just be from a marketing perspective, is I want to see the 1,000 people at my event. I want to see them all, right? I want this picture of success, which is 1,000 people standing in the exhibition hall, and it just looks full, right? So it's full of people, it's full of success. And therefore, when I go to the sponsors or I show pictures to the media, it looks like this was amazing, right? It was just packed. So that packed means success. There are other metrics you could probably track for success, but this is a very visual, easy way to sell the idea to people. What happens in reality in the events is that you kind of layer, based on the size of the audience, you do things differently. So once you get over, let's say, 50 people, you'll be doing a webinar more than a meeting, which means the presenters will be broadcasting at the audience. The audience will be using things like chat, Q&A, polls, but not on the call. And then, if you have, bigger things like an exhibition hall where people are wandering around, stepping into different booths, you can make the booths their own audio zone or pod, if you like. And that way, when people step in, they start talking to representatives there that's not part of the room as a whole. And spatial audio works like that as well. So as you walk up to someone, you get louder and they can hear you, kind of a proximity. So that can work for allowing people to have these hallway conversations that you have in the real world. A colleague of mine said, one of the biggest things of running a conference or event is actually attending the hallway track or session, which he meant, they're the way you're standing in the hallway, you meet people and you start talking and great things end up happening.
That's right.
Yeah. So, I think we have two things in our platform. One is these audio pods or zones, so you can step into them. It might be a table and chairs for two people, or it might be a group area within a larger area. And the other one is breakout rooms. So you can just send everybody off to different rooms where they can have private conversations and work together in workshops, and then bring them back to a central place. And so being able to quickly break people up like that into smaller groups, allowing them to either self-serve, to do that themselves by going different places, or to teleport people to places you'd like them to go quickly. And that's what allows people to have this more intimate communication. And I think that's essential. Really, you want to have something where you build a relationship in those short amounts of time, because you don't want to spend. You don't want these events to be very long. They're going to be shorter and shorter, actually, and people want to get great value out of them very quickly. So that's why things like matchmaking services are great, where people can suddenly, just dial up and get assigned with someone with similar interests, and you can just teleport somewhere and have a little meeting. Those sorts of features are going to be more and more prevalent.
I always rave about your chatbots, and I think it is so amazing, especially for like Dan and I and Kate. We've hosted a couple of parties on Metaverse, and we didn't assign one person to be the kind of like onboarding guru, right? So all of us were like thinking that everybody knew what they were doing. But I love the fact that Mood Up has chatbots, and I played with that before. I dressed up my chatbots to all have the same kind of colored attire, and they even have wings. And I made them where they are prompt, like they will prompt you, "Hello, welcome to Mel Lim's Metaverse, a party on Mars, whatever." And then you interact with them. So I think it's a great way for someone new who hasn't even experienced a Metaverse before, have the ability to learn throughout the process. So that's like really a big thing for Mood Up, right? Because I know I had to program it on the other end, which is through LearnBright. Is that right, Danny?
Yeah, I think we're talking about where one of the fundamental components of what the metaverse will be includes AI, and we've had some great leaps and bounds of developments in AI over the last few years. It's really been incredible, and I almost like somebody unlocked a magic box and all this AI stuff became possible. So, but one thing we're seeing, a lot of people like the idea, but it hasn't been done perfectly yet, is the idea of having characters that are driven by AI. And we're going to see more and more of that in the metaverse, because it makes contextual sense. And I think, our platform we started actually the platform 7 years ago with learning and development and training in HR. So building scenarios and games in our platform. So it's very heavily based on bot technology and game scenarios. And we have over 1 billion style combinations for our avatars, as you mentioned, wings and things. But we've also got stuff that's more commercially, corporate suited as well.
Yes.
Yeah. So we call that library universal avatars, actually. And the plan for that is to allow people to use their avatar anywhere on the internet and change it as they go. So those are also used for these AI chatbots, and you can basically plug in a different brain to these chatbots. So we have a thing called Chat Mapper, which is kind of creating branching scenarios, but you can unplug that and then plug in something like Meta, aka Facebook, Wit AI engine, which is an AI dialogue engine, and using the speech recognition and text-to-speech. Essentially, these bots, you can talk to them in 50 different languages, and they understand the intent of what you're saying and can respond. And we also integrate with Google Dialogflow, which is another intention-based AI engine for conversations.
It's amazing.
And there's an open source one called Rasa. So also want to mention open source technology there. So yeah, plugging different brains into these bots, and the bots being able to sing and dance and gesture and interact, and they even pay attention. If they see you walk by, they kind of look at you and follow you a bit, or if something happens near them, they get a bit of attention. And this just adds life to the virtual environments, even if you're going in there when an event's not on. get
Yes,
these
and that's what
virtual
I love
staff.
about it, because typically, if you design a metaverse, it looks beautiful, but it's empty, right? But plugging in these chatbots into the space, it looks like, it's already, there's people in there.
Yeah.
And then I just like that I can have different chatbots doing different things, like being a bartender, being the concierge, and being the salesperson, and being a tutor. I think this. So tell us about the use cases that you see, um, especially for Mood Up. What are the top use cases?
Hey Mel,
Well,
can Danny, can you explain when you say chatbots? Can you
yeah.
explain exactly what that is? Because I am really fascinated by what you're saying. I think I've never seen or heard anything like this. And I don't think a lot of people have. But can you explain exactly what that is and what the role is? And then would love to hear the next what Mel said. 'Cause I think this is like I could have my new best friend as a chatbot.
Yeah, you could. And we've actually, interestingly, we set up a couple of chatbots to talk to each other. So you could just kind of listen in on their conversation and they just go back and forward talking to each other. So chatbots in our context, in the metaverse context, are really avatars like other people, but they're not powered by a real person. Instead, they've got some sort of brain behind them. So they'll stand around in a space, they can move around in a space. In fact, we're doing some interesting research with Matterport and Facebook on their. They released a bunch of research data. These are digital scans of 3D environments as a huge data set. And the idea is for us to use our bots, the AI bots, to actually try and understand the context of the environment, real world environment they're in. And this will be really cool for use of what's coming for augmented reality in the future around the real world. So, there's some super interesting things. I won't go down a deep rabbit hole on that, but the AI characters are, you just design them. I have a library of a few hundred different characters that I can just drop into an environment, change their name, change the voice they have, the accent, and then script them up or connect them to an AI engine and get them to be something you can have a conversation with. Really great. I mean, some of them even teach you how to do different things in workplace safety. For example, how to pick up objects and do things so you can follow their lead physically as an actor. And of course, they can assess you. So you can have conversations with them for soft skill development, negotiation, training, that sort of thing. And depending on your responses, all that can be scored and recorded so that you can see if you're getting better at what you're doing or worse, or if there's any skill gaps. So it's used in enterprises for training, learning and training a lot.
Yeah, Danny, I'm
I've
curious.
forgotten.
Yeah, I'm
Sorry,
curious. What if people get in love with a chatbot? That's how heartbreaking. Is that even possible? I mean, like we were discussing that, like you might fall in love with a chatbot and it's not even real. I mean, I know people are.
You could. It's actually really beautiful.
I don't know. I'm gonna say one word, and that's Tamagotchi. Tamagotchis. People used to be enamored with their Tamagotchis and look after them. If you don't know what a Tamagotchi is, just go look in the history books. But it was a little digital pet, essentially, that you would feed and look after, and and if you didn't, it would die, and people would cry. So I think you can get attached to digital friends, and I think what is that? Yeah. There's a great movie. I think it was called Her. That covered an AI relationship with one person, and at some point the guy asks, how many other people are you in love with? And she said, 1,627 right now. And it's like, I suddenly don't feel so special. So yeah, if you do get in, an AI friend, I would check in on them as how many friends they have.
Hey Danny, as long as they're not as good as the Tinder swindler, there you go.
So back to use cases. Okay.
I think I've lost the original question from Mel, by the way. If I answered that, or did I miss it?
So no, you touched a little bit on it, but my original question was talking about use cases. You did say, this was heavily used of like learning and training, but I think product demos would be great, right? Like, showing off a new product. What else have you seen people using this tech?
So definitely guide bots in when people land in an environment, so that they can just explain how to onboard in booths, in trade show booths, so you don't have to have a person present. And the really cool thing is you can, at a certain point in a conversation with a chatbot, if you run into a position where you don't have an answer, that can call a real person. So a real person can essentially jump into the body of the bot and start talking to you.
Jump into the bot.
What we get that all the time. If you use online chat for customer service, you know that happens, right? The bot starts off talking to you and eventually they hand you over to a human operative. At least you think, and sometimes you're not sure. I think that's the sort of thing we'll end up seeing more of in the event side. But then the learning and training, we have virtual customers, virtual patients. One of the great projects we've been working with the university for nearly 6 years, and they've won lots of awards, and the project's just been continuing expanding, was for training healthcare workers before they go out to people's homes to do real assessment of people's homes for, let's say, risks of falls. So elderly patients or people that might be at risk of falling over in their own home, which is a huge healthcare problem. So the way they train students at the university is they would actually bring in an actor to pretend to be the elderly patient, and they'd put 2 students in the room with the actor, and they'd role play. So the actor would answer questions, and of course you could only do 2 students at a time. So it was time prohibitive, but also added cost, and people had to be at the university to do it. So with the wonderful department there at Curtin University, they designed and we helped build a virtual home visit, which allowed students to go to a home and investigate and find risks of falls, things you could slip on or trip on, or things in storage that might indicate a prior injury, like a pair of crutches or a wheelchair. But at the same time, you could walk around the house and you could talk to other family members, and through conversation kind of elicit what we call knowledge gems or facts that would add to your understanding of the whole situation. So the students have been using this for 6 years, each semester, different sets of students going through, but it gives them the confidence and training before they go out in the real world and actually do a home visit with real people. So they get to simulate that. I mean, that's just one use case, but it's a very interesting one. And now they're doing a virtual hospital visit, and they've extended it now that a number of students get into that hospital together, and they role play different sort of medical roles that people have in hospitals to make decisions on, let's say, are we going to release this patient? What's the next steps we should take? And they deliberate as students together, playing different roles that would be in the hospital. So, and that's all done just with their phones or tablets or laptops or VR headsets if they have them. And, they don't need to be on campus to do that. So it's really expanded. I think the use cases are really unlimited. Anything that's an experience, a scenario, these kind of bots and immersive experiences are going to cover.
Yeah, I want to let the audience know that you don't have to necessarily have, a fake avatar, because I have seen Danny in Muda looking like Danny too. So Danny, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. Just before we do, Dan, did you want to jump in and say something? I heard you.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking about how you can simulate a customer. So, for example, let's say you have an employee in a retail environment, or even over the phone, and before they actually interact with a human being, you could have them do a training where maybe they interact with the bot. Like you're saying, maybe the bot is a potential client, or even maybe if it's like an angry customer. I think of how customer service has basically gone out the window the last 2 years, and it's horrible everywhere. So this makes me think of like how you can simulate, or even, I mean, there's so many ways you could simulate having a human being simulated on an environment for companies to use that in a training way. I mean, think about how much money they save from not having to hire so many trainers or even people to do like training with, right? You can just utilize those bots, and companies that a lot of small businesses can't afford to have a whole training department. Well, now they can, they could all be using similar bots. And I imagine, I don't know if it works like normal AI where they really learn over time, and it kind of like like the bot becomes better and better because it's starting to hear a lot more situations and scenarios?
You can do it that way. It gets pretty expensive to train the bots. It takes about 6 months and $100,000 to start really getting a bot that's believable. If you've used any of the online or device voice recognition systems, like Siri, eventually they go off the rails and say, yeah, well, let me bring up a website about that for you. So building a bot that's really comprehensive for training can take a bit to get to that point. But there's a great company doing that called Fierce. Fierce the company's based on an original book called Fierce Conversations. There's like 3 books for leadership on doing critical or difficult conversations and how to handle them. And Fierce is one of the top 3 books in the world on that. And Fierce, the business, builds 3D simulations so that you can know how to handle difficult conversations. And not avoid them, and not tear people to shreds either. And they've been building simulations for many different companies, and they have a whole explanation on their website how they build those scenarios. It's built on our platform, but it's all their intellectual property and skill and knowledge that they've pulled together to make them something that's really compelling. And they use 3D characters in their simulations, from our universal avatar library, but they used pre-recorded voiceovers. So they get a professional voiceover actor to do it instead of using the text-to-speech that we use. And so you've got this whole spectrum of going from 3D character with text-to-speech all the way up to what Mel was just talking about, these video avatars, and all the way to volumetric video, which is capturing people in 3D in studios and having these animations of them as volumetric video. And it's a matter of cost and effort and flexibility and reuse of these assets that you kind of have to consider. Now, the universal avatars, the chatbots as 3D actors are really flexible. They can do new gestures. You can get them to say anything. They lip sync automatically. The text to speech is you just write in what you want them to say. It does it. So you don't need voice actors. You don't need animators. You don't need stylists. Everything is kind of there for you. So really quick, easy, cheap. And then, right at the other end of the spectrum, we have, let's record someone Matrix style in a studio with green screens all around and 50,000 cameras pointing at them. And we end up with this volumetric video of the person that, you can see them from any angle. You can go right in and look at what buttons they have on their shirt in detail, really cool stuff. But, at the moment, we're not seeing those characters necessarily rigged. Rigged means with a kind of, yes, you can record them doing a motion, like maybe it's somebody doing a slam dunk, and you record that and you've got that as an animation you can replay. And you see that a lot in AR. People will have these people, you'll see them do an animation, but that's all they can do. It's that one pre-recorded animation, or maybe a handful. They can't suddenly turn around and talk to you about the weather. Not that you might want that, but that you get my idea. So yes. Having rigged characters at high fidelity is still something, and believability, because it's not just that they can move their limbs and arms, but they need to look like the way the person does, the same gait in their walk, the same, little tweaks we have about the way we move our head or the way we look. All those things need to be projected through. So you need all those traits to come across. But in the middle ground, we have something that's really easy to do. And we do this quite a bit since we created the feature, which is using green screen and having someone stand in front of a green screen head to toe and either live streaming them into the 3D environment or pre-recorded. But the green screen gets removed, the person's standing in the space, in the 3D space with all the other avatars who are watching, and suddenly you have a live video person watching you, presenting to you. But the trick is to have that video face everyone. So it kind of looks at everybody. The cardboard cutout of video, if you like, is looking directly at everybody at the same time. And then everybody thinks the presenter's looking at them. And that works really well. Any audiovisual team can get a green screen and reasonable lighting together. Right. So it's cheap as chips, as they say. And that allows you to project someone into the 3D environment as video, as who they are, celebrities or C-level executives, and people get a real kick out of it. I saw a great product launch. I can't say who the client is yet, but they did a whole a product reveal, brand reveal, and they had their CEO up on stage as video. And it was really, really cool. And I heard just as I was coming into this session earlier, somebody was asking a question about having actors or avatars or celebrities larger than life, like really big. And they did that. So that they brought the video character in, 10 times normal human size. So it was a bit like, one of those celebrity or music events where the people are towering over you. And it worked really well.
Great. Dan, Kate, shall we open the floor up for questions for Danny?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it. Yeah, Danny, we were talking about the United Nations 75th anniversary, Dan, was that correct? And Pete Ball performed and everyone just went nuts. And that was really exciting. So Jeff Hoffman, the co-founder of Priceline.com, shared us that story, and it's fascinating. People are doing it right now. So Dan, I'm going to hand it out to you.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about, I mean, this is amazing, but like, let's say I wanted a celebrity friend and I can't have them in real life be my friend, but I could have their bot in a virtual world be my friend, right? I mean,
That's why I told you I married some kind of a weirdo person. I'm just kidding.
I'm not saying I need that. I'm just saying I'm thinking like, there you go. Happy Valentine's Day, Wendy. So no, I just think it's funny how I'll be fascinated to see how people will be interacting with others in the virtual world, and how you mentioned eventually how will we know if it's actually a human being or not as they become more and more lifelike and situations become more and more lifelike. And it's just fascinating, like you mentioned about her, or people having relationships, like romantic relationships. Maybe they're lonely on Valentine's Day, so they go to their virtual world and they meet. Maybe there's a romantic bot that they have waiting for them there. Who knows? Or maybe 3 or 4 bots.
Cool.
Wow. Wow.